And I think this idea of humor, there's probably no better time to inject humor, not only into this conversation, but into all of our lives. Because right now, when we look ahead towards the future, I get it. The future for many leaders right now, it feels a little confusing. It feels chaotic. Um, our future growth index, it's a diagnostic tool we use. It is continuing to find time and time again that the leadership and different teams within an organization, they're trending from being growth bound, they're trending more being stuck in the what we call the cave of confusion, or even stuck in the gap where they're just constantly griping about problems. And we started using this diagnostic tool to really quantify an individual or a team's or an organization's perspective of how they view the future, because how one views the future in the present moment is going to directly influence their thinking, their decisions, their actions going forward into the future. So if you look at the future as confusing, scary, complex, you're not going to make decisions. Whereas if you looked at the future as hopeful, bigger, better, brighter, I want to get your take on this. Why why should banks and credit unions double down on projects in tough times instead of pulling back? Why double down now?
I don't think banks and credit unions have the opportunity to wait, right? We are already like most, I don't want to put everyone into this box, but so many are behind the times when it comes to technology and innovation and AI and cloud and all of that. All of those words are scary, but we don't have the opportunity to wait to do the things that we need to do. There needs to be budget for advancement in technology and getting some of these really cool, like we talked about, these fintech companies that are coming up with some of the most creative ways to transform banking. We don't have the opportunity to wait until we have the means, or maybe potentially we don't see that we have the budget.
Mm.
Stopping is, I think, going to be a sure death, and it seems like something that would swallow you up and spit you out.
Well, memento mori is a Stoic Latin phrase that drives my, if not my day to day thinking, it definitely drives my week to week thinking. And memento mori is Latin for remember your death. And I did actually use this recently in some group coaching with financial brand leaders, and kind of like a joke. This one, I'm not going to say it landed poorly, but it was definitely an uncomfortable conversation for many.
Mhm.
And once again, I think when you start to lean into the uncomfortableness just a bit, it takes courage to do that, number one. But we have to remember growth is never found or experienced in the comfort zone. If we think back to as an individual, and if you're watching or listening, I want you to think back on all of your experiences throughout your life. When you experienced the greatest amount of growth, was it when you were in the comfort zone, or did you have to exit the comfort zone, climb up the mountain, go into the unknown just a little bit? And once again, I think about Frozen. Was it Frozen
Mhm.
2 on that one, into the unknown? But it takes courage and it takes a commitment to take those steps. You've been a little bit vulnerable, and I appreciate where we've gone with this conversation, because this is the heart of growth right here. How do you deal with change? If you think about all of the changes that we've experienced, particularly since the start of this decade, when we all went to sleep on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2019, we woke up January 1st, 2020. No one knew what we were going to experience two and a half, 3 months later. was just not in our perception, not in our field of vision. So we've all experienced a tremendous amount of change, exponential change since then. How do you deal with change to navigate some of this complexity?
Yeah, I don't want to say with all that we've talked about is I'm good at it, but I definitely embrace it. So I'll give you a situation, right? So last year I was part of a riff at a fintech company that I was at, and I completely lost myself. Like, what am I going to do? I felt like that was going to be my place for the rest of my career. I was not only, professionally frustrated, I was internally, personally heartbroken by this, right? So I looked at myself and I said, I think this is an opportunity for me to get out of my comfort zone. I had always been part of an organization where I was, maybe the number two person within. I hadn't taken on that leadership direct position before. So that was my next target. And it's been a year now. And I can say I've been more uncomfortable in this last year than I ever have. I've shed more tears. I've, been super frustrated. I have grown so much. And now a year looking back the last year, I am so thankful that things happened the way that they did, because I'm not even the same person. We're not the same people from COVID and 2020. I think we have a new appreciation for life and people and going to the movies and not wearing masks and all of those things that we had to go through the last year. I am so appreciative of every challenge that I've had, because like you said, we grow in that uncomfortable place, in the sometimes those dark areas and those dark places. And I'd mentioned to you before that I have this tattoo that says, I loved you in my darkest, or I loved you at my darkest. And it's true. Like, I love you, and I can see the light, and I can see the love in the world, even in this dark place that I might be in.
Yeah. I want to reference something that you said. I'm not perfect. I'm not good at dealing with change. I mean, I'm wrapping up a second book titled Banking on Change, and I'm not perfect at it either. I just think it's a matter, if number one, if we know that change is the constant,
Mhm.
and particularly now in the world that we're moving into with AI, for example, if I think back on all of the experience, and the only way we can gain this is this perspective, if you will, which is the sum of context and framing. If we go back to 1994, 1994 was the year that the internet reached the mass consciousness of humanity. Flash forward to now, where we're 2024, so 30 years, and we think about all of the exponential changes that we've experienced at a macro level that have impacted us on a micro level within the context of financial services. Now, add AI on top of that,
Mhm.
and it becomes exponential. And we
Yeah.
we can't perceive the future. We can take the perception of the past and apply that towards the future. So I think knowing too that we don't have to change alone. We're not on this journey of transformation alone, is another key element to the heart of growth right here, because we're doing this together.
Mhm.
And it gives us time to pause and to reflect, but we can also use some of the lessons of the past to apply them going forward into the future. And that's where I want to shift this. I want to look ahead towards the future just a bit. um Knowing that we don't have to change and transform alone, knowing that we can create culture that makes people feel safe, secure to share ideas, thoughts, feelings, emotions. And when we do that, we're going to get even better together, first and foremost, internally as a team, as an organization, so that we can get even better together externally for account holders. When we look at technology, how what are the opportunities here for financial brand leaders to embrace out of the box solutions that can also be paired with custom development? Because I know that's an area of focus in the work that you're doing over at Nimbus.
Well, like you mentioned, I mean, we all know that, we're going towards a future of more AI, of more automation, of more cloud computing, all of those things. Like that's just inevitable, right? So I look at that little gap in those other little pieces of what we can do. And I think it comes in our creativity. So what do we hear on the news? What do we hear that our communities and our people are worried about, right? It's climate change, it's sustainability, it's diversity, it's those kinds of things. So, how are we incorporating solutions into our systems, into our technology? I look at all of the amazing fintechs that are out there creating those opportunities and situations to help address these things, right? Like there's financial companies that focus specifically on how can we lend so that people can do sustainability home improvements. How like we talked about roll-ups for nonprofit organizations. It's the concept of rolling my money into a savings account. How about I now roll my money into a nonprofit so that I can help with some of the natural disasters that we've experienced, or I've actually had so at Nimbus we are big in like niche banking, right? And we have a contest. We had a contest recently where people could give ideas of what we can do in the niche market, and I'm so proud because it was one of the individuals on my team, one of my leaders, came up with an amazing idea of how can we bank the underbanked in immigration, right? We have these immigrants that come to our country, they have no means of building credit, getting loans, and they want to come here, work, contribute, but we're not allowing them to be successful in that. So I look beyond just AI, automation, those kinds of things. I'm looking into how can we get creative and really truly help the areas that keep people up at night, right? And it is some of these things like I've mentioned.
Well, it comes back to how we started this conversation. It's taking an empathetic approach to growth. It's putting people at the center of your thinking, but not just your thinking, putting people at the center of your doing, which is the best way to establish trust, which is through words and actions, what you say and what you do. So it really does all come full circle. Staying here in the future just a bit longer as we start to wrap up, what do you think that we're going to see going forward? If you could just pull out the crystal ball, look ahead to the future when it comes to financial services, banks, credit unions, innovations. What are we going to see 2024 and beyond from your point of view right now?
I think it's going to get more aggressive in terms of like you have to bring in, this technology. Our customers are telling us that they're craving this personalization. It's not the same as, oh, I bank where my parents bank and I'm comfortable with that, right? We know that, on average people have five different, financial institutions that they're going with, and so we have to, like I mentioned, continue to be creative. I don't think that financial institutions are looking at an out of the box solution. They're also not saying, hey, I'm going to buy all of my products from this one company and we're going to just make this work, right? It's kind of like this Frankenstein approach. Ironically, I have a Frankenstein book over here. It's this Frankenstein approach of how can I make these all fit together with what my customers truly need, and that is it. The foundation is customer experience, and making sure that we're delivering the products, the services, the things that they need, and that comes with being creative.
I like the Frankenstein analogy. Something else that popped into my head too is Legos.
Yeah.
I think about my kids. They have all. We have four kids. They have all these different Lego sets. But what happens after they build it? It all just goes into the Lego box. And so the Lego box has every Lego except recently they've gotten into watching or rewatching the Star Wars trilogy. So they've seen 4, 5, and 6. They're now finished with 1, 2, and 3, and then they're about to watch 7, 8, and 9. It's completely out of order, but I said maybe over the holiday break, what we can do is watch 1 through 9 all in the same exact order. So they've been going through and building Star Wars ships and whatnot. But it's interesting to watch their creativity and their curiosity and the breakthroughs that they're having through innovation, but also collaboration with each other. Like, I can't find this piece. And like, oh, here it is. So it's interesting to watch that behavior at really a kind of just a microcosm. But that's so applicable to what we're all seeing within financial services going forward into the future. I always like to wrap up on a practical takeaway. And we've talked about culture, we've talked about empathy, we've talked about innovation. What's the next best thing? If someone could, who's watching or listening, could just do one thing next on their journey of growth to integrate a heart of growth into the work that they're doing, what would be the one recommendation you would say to do next?
It's going to be two. Sorry, I like to break the rules,
I
but I'm
like
going to
that.
say listen and create a place of safety. If you're listening to your teams, your peers, your leaders, you have a greater sense of empathy and understanding, and then you can create a place of safety for them. And creating a place of safety creates innovation. It allows for creativity and thinking outside the box. We're leaders, and we're leaders because we are supposed to be showing a good example to our employees, right? And so creating that place of safety ourselves and that leadership is critical and important.
Absolutely. Listen and create a place of safety, very practical, that any one of us can take forward and apply, not tomorrow, but apply starting right now, today.